I need to understand. Your manifest includes one live animal and a significant quantity of raw meat.
That's Gerald. He's for the cultural exchange.
The Vorkai Dominion's apex demonstration had been a diplomatic institution for 300 years, a formal tradition in which newly encountered civilizations presented their most formidable creature as symbolic evidence of biological vitality within their home biosphere. The tradition served multiple purposes simultaneously, establishing species credibility within the Dominion's complex social hierarchy, demonstrating environmental fitness as philosophical framework, and providing what several thousand years of Vorkai cultural evolution had decided was the most authentic possible expression of civilizational character. Every species that had participated across 3 centuries had brought something terrifying. The Kreth had brought a 6-limbed armored carnivore capable of puncturing spacecraft hull plating with its primary crushing appendages. The Drennic had brought a creature that hunted by generating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted nervous system function within a 30-meter radius. The Moritee, who'd wanted to make an impression, had brought something that even the other participating species had needed a moment to absorb. Coalition Command had discussed humanity's entry for 11 days before Lieutenant Commander Petra Wyndham walked into the planning session, listened for approximately 4 minutes, and suggested Gerald. Her colleague, Lieutenant Davin Ashcraft, had been the one to actually retrieve Gerald from the wildlife management facility in Manitoba, where he'd been residing since his previous owner had made the reasonable decision that honey badgers were less suited to domestic arrangement than initially anticipated. Gerald was approximately 60 centimeters long, weighed 12 kilograms, and had a documented history of surviving 14 separate encounters with venomous species that should have been fatal, escaping 7 different enclosures rated for animals 3 times his size, and on one occasion that remained classified within the facility's incident reports, having provoked a confrontation with a much larger predator and emerging from that encounter as the clear winner. He was also, by most measurable behavioral assessments, incapable of registering threat levels as anything other than personally inconvenient. The Apex Arena, a circular structure seating roughly 40,000 spectators representing dozens of Dominion species, fell into a particular quality of silence when Gerald was carried onto the presentation platform in his transport case. On the opposite end of the platform, the Dominion's contribution to the demonstration waited. The Vorkai had brought a Kreth, a species their own naturalists classified as the Dominion's uncontested apex predator, a creature 8 meters tall with armored stone-like scales, glowing crimson eyes, and documented combat effectiveness against everything their biosphere had ever produced. Grand Arbiter Drennic, watching from the official observation platform, leaned toward his cultural liaison and said, very quietly, "Their animal is considerably smaller than I anticipated." The cultural liaison watched Petra open the transport case and replied, also very quietly, "There may be information we're missing." Gerald emerged from the case, looked at the Kreth, and appeared to arrive at a conclusion that involved neither retreat nor caution. What followed was one of the more professionally educational experiences in Grand Arbiter Drennic's 30-year career overseeing apex demonstrations. The Kreth, whose behavioral conditioning had been developed over years of training against every significant predator species the Dominion had documented, encountered something its training had not specifically prepared it for. An animal that assessed the situation found the situation not particularly noteworthy, and communicated this assessment through posture and approach with an efficiency that suggested either complete confidence or the complete absence of the neurological architecture that typically produced caution. The Kreth stepped backward. The arena absorbed this in stages. The 40,000 spectators had watched apex demonstrations for generations. They had seen rare contests, unexpected outcomes, moments that became reference points in Dominion cultural memory. They had not previously witnessed their primary apex predator producing a backward step in response to something smaller than one of its own secondary limbs. Gerald, meanwhile, was investigating a piece of raw meat Petra had placed on the platform as a practical incentive for cooperation, apparently finding this more immediately relevant than whatever the large armored creature at the other end of the arena represented. For context, Davin said, addressing Grand Arbiter Drennic's increasingly complicated expression from the platform edge, our species produced approximately 1 million documented years of evolutionary pressure against predators, disease vectors, and environmental conditions that would qualify most of this arena's residents for emergency evacuation protocols. Gerald's particular lineage is considered one of the more successful products of that process. Drennic looked at Gerald. Gerald had finished the raw meat and appeared to be contemplating the Kreth with the specific expression of an animal deciding whether the large armored thing constituted an interesting problem or merely a large inconvenience. "He's fearless," Drennic said. "Not a question. He doesn't appear to have a specific biological mechanism for processing threats as threats," Petra said. "Coalition xenobiologists have studied this extensively. The working theory involves a neurological configuration that essentially registers danger as a category of problem to be addressed rather than avoided. And this configuration," Drennic said slowly, "is native to your planet." "He's a fairly standard example of his species," Davin confirmed. "There are roughly 400,000 of them on Earth currently. They're considered moderately difficult to manage in wildlife contexts." The holographic display panel beside Gerald updated with its fearlessness index and venom immunity documentation, which an observant data analyst in the upper gallery had compiled in real time from the Coalition Species Registry and projected for the benefit of the assembled thousands who were now reading it with the specific attention of beings reconsidering several assumptions. Drennic was quiet for a long moment. "I believe," he finally said, with the considered gravity of a Grand Arbiter selecting words that would become part of official Dominion record, "that the Coalition's contribution to this demonstration requires significant archival documentation." "We appreciate that," Petra said. "I have one question for the record," Drennic continued. "How does your species manage to coexist with this animal's broader environmental context?" "Carefully," Petra said, "and with considerable respect for anything that doesn't worry about what's bigger than it is." Drennic looked once more at Gerald, who had lost interest in the Kreth entirely and was investigating the seam between two platform sections with focused entrepreneurial energy. "Your planet," he said, "sounds genuinely extraordinary." "We find it character-building," Petra said. Gerald, having determined the platform seam contained nothing of immediate practical value, turned his attention back toward the general direction of the arena's catering level and began walking with purpose toward whatever interesting problems existed in that direction. The Kreth watched him go, and then sat down. The arena erupted. The END